All right, got something for you guys today. I know my last video was talking about my humongous folding sword, my self-defense blade that I'm going to be carrying on me. I like to couple that with something like a tool knife, and this is kind of one of those kind of knives. This is a cheap knife from Kershaw. So let's talk blades, everybody. That's what we're into today. Kershaw. Not just any Kershaw, it's the Barlow knife. This is the Culpepper. Why is it called the Culpepper? I have no idea. But it's called the Culpepper. Model number 4383. This this is kind of disappointing because this is exactly how the knife came to me. The box was a little bit ripped up just like this. And when I did this, the knife just slid right out of the box and into my hand. So yeah, you get your plastic sleeve and your insurance information through Kershaw, and that's practically all you really get, and your knife. So I'm going to take this out of camera frame, and there it is. Now, what about this knife? This is basically my tool knife for the moment. If I'm going to carry a self-defense knife, I'm going to couple it with a tool knife. My do-it-all knife, I guess. And I don't do very much. I just do simple cutting. You know, if I need to cut open mail or boxes or cut some rope or some ties, zip ties, whatever. If I'm cutting thread off my shirt, I'm not going to bust out my folding sword to do it and look like some freak with a humongous knife because people are going to start thinking that I'm, you know, some crazy lunatic with a freaking weapon. So this is going to alleviate that kind of stress. Now, this is my don't care knife. So much so that I actually don't remember what the steel is. All I know is it's kind of like a something CR MOV steel. One of their cheaper steels. It's a budget steel that is not going to be great to hold an edge, and it's not going to be that great against rust. Or maybe it will be. I don't know. It's a something CR MOV steel. If you guys know exactly what the steel is, go ahead and put it in the comment section because this is my I don't care knife. And I don't care. This is my back pocket knife. I just throw it in my back pocket and I use it and I drop it in my back pocket, you know. It's a slip joint. I can tell you that right now. It has no locking mechanism at all. It just opens and closes with the nail nick on this blade. You just pop it open like that. Use it, and it is plenty sharp. It really is. I went like this to try and get some gunk off of the blade. I look at my thumb, and I actually filleted some skin off. Just enough to... I wasn't bleeding anything. It just... I felt it kind of just, you know, kind of take a small layer of skin off. That's how sharp this thing is. And at a price tag that's under $30 at 26 and change on Amazon, it's not bad. It really isn't. It's a good knife, at least for as long as I've used it. There's a couple of small gripes I have about this knife, but at its price range, there really isn't too much to really complain about. Except for, I mean, it's really sharp in here. Where the liners are. So when you're holding it and you're trying to cut with it, you can feel that catching onto your skin. But what I really like is they're using premium materials, which, I don't know, some people might not call this premium, but it looks like a knife that could be double its price. It really is, at least in my opinion. I could easily mistake this knife for a $60 knife. But it's using real brass liners and brass pins, real G10 and nickel bolsters. It's a fantastic look. It really does. It's a very attractive knife. You know, and I don't really think that this is going to be too much of a heavy, hard use knife. It really isn't. I don't really hard use my knives too often, so this is more realistic to how I use my knives, and that's fine. This is just something that I'm going to use as a backup, kind of, you know, my priority, just cut things and then just put it away. Now, what would make this knife even better is if it had a half stop. Now, what's a half stop? A half stop is basically where you click it forward and it'll actually go click at the halfway point, so you can actually move your fingers out of the way and close it all the rest of the way one-handed. Just what I'm used to. That's my MO. I really do like slip joints that have a half stop. This does not have a half stop. I have to actually pretend like it does. It's just one continuous motion with this thing. And it doesn't snap close until you're a little bit more than halfway anyways. So around about right there. So by that point, you should have your fingers out of the way. Just common sense when you have this, just basically use that. Now, as you notice, this knife does not come with a pocket clip and it does not come with a sheath, but it does come with a lanyard hole. So you can throw a lanyard on there, and I think that would help out with this knife. If you're carrying this knife and this is your throw in your back pocket type of knife, if you need something a little bit more on there, because you're going to have this jingling around with your change and your keys and your chapstick and your tactical flashlight or whatever the hell else you got in there, it would be nice to have a little something to help aid you in getting this knife out of your pocket. That lanyard hole, I think, would be a nice, and it is a nice addition to this knife. Now, you guys know me. I don't care much for lanyard holes. I wish they could phase them out altogether, but this warrants an okay by me, thumbs up, that it actually can be something that would make sense on a knife like this. So it works, and if you need it, it's there. So that's, kind of my thing. I would probably like this better if it had a backlock or a half stop or both. If it had a backlock, that would mean that this slicey ass knife could actually be just a little bit more safer in use because it's so big. I mean, it is pretty decent size. It's not one of those tiny slip joints. This is actually kind of a decent sized knife. Now, I'm going to get into the specs of this knife in a minute. But like I said, this knife is mainly for just back pocket use. And I'm so used to I'm so used to half stops on slip joints that you see me do it. I just do that, and then I move my fingers out of the way. So I actually pretend like there is a half stop on this, but there isn't. Now, as the Barlow knife that this is, it's actually not bad. I really do like that wood grain G10 that's on this knife. It looks really attractive. And without mistaking, if I were to hand this knife to you, I'm pretty sure you would really think that this knife is actually kind of a little bit more expensive than its truthful price tag. If you didn't know too much about it, you would probably think, oh, that knife looks like it'd come with a pretty price tag. No, less than $30, 26 and change. And you get a decent back pocket, I don't care knife. So this is not a bad purchase. Now, you guys know me. I'm not a huge fan of cheap knives. I'm not. But with something like this, it doesn't break the bank. The nail nick on this thing functions very well. It actually looks to me like it's actually a little bit more reminiscent to a fuller, or what a lot of people call a blood groove. It's got functional jimping here that isn't too aggressive, although it does kind of feel like it is. But when you're cutting downwards on this thing, you don't have to worry too much about a lock anyways. I won't go stabbing into anything hardcore with this thing because it doesn't have a lock. But it does have a pretty nice needle tip on there. So with that being said, I'm going to get into the specs of this knife so you guys know what you're getting yourself into if you're interested in something like this. If you guys don't like the big murdery knives, well, this knife might be up your alley. This is just a simple knife. Like I said, it's a simple pocket knife. Simple slip joint. 3.28 ounces. That is hella light. For what it is, this is a dedicated back pocket knife. The only problem is that when I do drop it in my back pocket, it goes like that. So it sits in my back pocket long ways at the very bottom. And I actually do feel it when I sit down and when I get up. If I ever carry around a slip joint, I normally carry around a smaller slip joint only because it's a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. And you don't feel that shape, because it slides around a little bit more, so you have a little bit of leeway with it. It sits perfectly in one spot. It takes up the entire bottom of your back pocket. Of course, you can put this in your front pockets if you want. I'm not saying that that's not limited, but if you don't have anything else in that front pocket, expect it to go whack. and have it long ways in your pocket. That's going to be really odd feeling, and it's going to be it's going to bother you. It just bothered me, but I'm getting used to it. It's just a dedicated back pocket backup knife. So for tool usage only. Sorry, I just bumped the camera right there. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the length of this thing. Looking at 3 1/4, in between 3 1/4 and 3 3/8. And you're looking at a total of 7.5 inches all together. So yeah, it's one of those, it's not a huge knife, but it's not really a tiny knife either. And you could, go for something smaller if you want. So you're looking at a 12.1 on the handle, and on the blade you're looking at a 2.3. Plenty thin, and the handle works. It really does. There's not too much of the, finger grouping going on here. It just works. Now, the only thing, like I said, that bothers me is the sharp area in here with the brass liners catching my skin. It does feel a bit sharp in there, and it does catch onto my skin, which causes me to just kind of not really like the way this feels. I could knock that down if I really wanted to with some sandpaper and a little bit of elbow grease, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just keep it the way it is, and hopefully it'll knock itself down in time and use. I'm pretty sure it'll soften up, I guess. I can only hope anyways. So it's a brass pin construction. It's keeping everything together. Your G10 handle scales, everything is nice and fit. I don't really see too many gaps in here, so it's fine. The tolerances on this thing are great. There's no side-to-side blade play at all, but there is forward and back because this doesn't really have an actual lock on it. It's just a slip joint. So with that being said, it's not a bad knife to have. Just be really, really cautious with it because it is sharp. This is a lot sharper than I expected it to be, but it is a Kershaw. So when it comes to slip joints, I go mainly for case knives because they make some good slip joints. But their quality control hasn't been what it used to be. It used to be really good, and now it's kind of lackluster. Now I'm probably sure you've heard some stories about case knives and how they look pretty from a distance, but when you go up, there's a whole plethora of just ugliness. There's spaces and little spaces in the back here where you can see light through it, and sometimes the grinds are a little bit weird and off, and their blades are dull, or it's like a bird on one side because they just take it, they sharpen it once and once on two sides, and they drop it in a box. And I think it's really, there's a lot of slop lately with case knives. But I still collect them. I still like them. And some of that slop to me, can be tolerated. Simply because there's just some stuff you can't really escape from. But if it doesn't affect the function or the real look of the knife, I think it is passing as acceptable. The only thing that bothers me is the fact that their blades come to me sometimes 80% of the time dull. And that's only because whoever's on that grinding wheel, they just grind it once on one side, once on the other, and they don't care. They just, and then on the conveyor belt it goes to where it gets packaged. It's just, to me, I know they're trying to bust. Everything is handmade for the most part. In Case Knives Factory is all handmade stuff. Now, of course, everything else is punched out, in the machines. Blade shapes and handle material and all that stuff is punched out, but everything is hand polished, hand sharpened, and hand ground as far as the handle material and everything else. So a lot of that stuff, when it comes down to it, a lot of things that are handmade are going to have a little bit of slop to them. Nothing's going to be perfect because it's handmade. So keeping that in mind, it actually makes it more acceptable. And, for something like this, this is great fit and finish for it being a cheap knife. And it's sharp, and it works, and it's functional. It doesn't have a shield on there that says Kershaw, and 1886. It doesn't have any of that stuff. It's just, it's a simple user knife that has a classic look to it. It's just, it works, and this is one of those knives where something were to happen to this knife, I'm not going to be heartbroken about it. I could simply just buy another one because it's under $30, and it's one of those budget knives where, you know, if it was one of my case knives, and I took it out and it's one of those really nice bone handle ones, and I lent it to somebody to use and they drop it down a drainage pipe somewhere and I lose it forever, yeah, I'm going to be a little pissed. But if someone were to drop this in a drainage pipe or a drainage vent or something out in the middle of the street somewhere, I'm going to be like, well, that sucks. Pull out my phone, go on Amazon and buy another one because this is that cheap. With a case knife, you'd be lucky to find that same exact one, because they're all different. They all have unique appearances in the bone and the horn and the wood that they use. Some of those things are going to be harder to find, or maybe they're out of production and you can't replace that. And some of those price tags aren't going to be as cheap as you think. A little slip joint knife can be anywhere between $80 to $100. So this being what it is, I think it is a great value, and it's a knife that is simple along its terms of being replaced if something were to happen to it. And I think this is my I don't care knife. Pull it out, cut something with it, do whatever I need to do, and drop it back in the back pocket. Let it jingle around with my keys and get all scratched up and marred, and I'm not going to care. This is my little beater knife, so it works. It's one of those, you need a knife for something, that's what it is. You keep your self-defense knife or your little pretty jewel grail knife nice and sharp and pretty while you use the I don't care knife. So I don't know. I used to have a lot of these. I used to have a collection of I don't care knives. They're the ones that I've had for years, or the ones that I've kept from just, days past where I just didn't care about them. I'd sharpen them, make sure they're nice and, razor sharp, and they work, and I use them when I need it, and then I put it away when I don't. It's just, and then I got on to carrying better knives, and then I kind of forgotten about my I don't care knives, and then I got rid of them, and now I'm like, you know what? I think it's good to have a couple of the I don't care knives in a vast collection of good, better knives. So having this is actually just kind of a throwback to my past and how I used to really carry cheaper knives. But all in all, this isn't a bad knife for the price. I wish the steel was a little better, but at its price tag, I guess I really can't complain. I wish it had a half stop. That would make this knife so much better in my eyes if it had a half stop or a back lock. But a lot of people tell me it's a Barlow knife. It's not going to have either of those things. But I mean, I wouldn't mind if they actually throw them on there. That'd be nice. So, I mean, it's not a huge deal. It works. It's a fantastic knife. The nail nick works. But I got to tell you, I've seen these knives with terrible grinds and nail nicks that don't look even. And this one actually came out really well. I'm actually lucky that this actually came out with even grind on both sides of the knife. It's nice and slicey. I mean, I slivered one of my thumbs, took some skin off just by trying to wipe off some gunk on the blade. So it's plenty sharp. It really is. And it's a fantastic value for just a back pocket I don't care knife. So just one of those things. If you're looking for something like that works, put it in your back pocket, throw it in your purse. I don't care. It's just one of those knives you keep in your console of your car or in your glove compartment when you need it, if you need it. Just, keep in mind that it's a slip joint, so it's not going to have, the locking capabilities of cold steel. It's one of those simple, use it and throw it back where you got it. And then, if you need another cutting tool, you got one. This is what it is. And it doesn't break the bank at all. So it's a great value for what it is. So go ahead and slash that like button, slash that like button, stab that subscribe, slice that bell icon. So that way you guys are notified anytime that I post new stuff. And in these craziest of times, everybody, please be kind, be safe, and carry responsibly. And I will see you all awesome people in the next video.